Morning. The time is now 9:35 a.m. and a quorum of the board is present. State Board of Education meeting of December 10th, 2024 is called to order. First item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda in order of priority. Are there any items that board members would like to add or delete from the agenda? President Pugh.
I move that we add to the agenda a resolution honoring Dr. Cheryl Kennedy.
So we have a motion for a resolution to honor Dr. Kennedy. Do we have a second?
Second.
With a second from Dr. Pritchett. Is there any discussion associated therewith? Hearing and seeing none, if we could have a roll call vote, please.
Bullock is absent. Lipton?
Yes.
McMillan?
Pass.
Pritchett?
Yes.
Pugh?
Yes.
Robinson?
Yes.
Snyder?
Yes.
And Tilly.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Very good. Any other motions for possible addition? Dr. Pugh.
I move that we place on the agenda State Board of Education resolution on charter school financial transparency.
We have a motion from Dr. Pugh. Do we have a second? Second from Ms. Lipton. Dr. Pugh, to you for discussion.
There are several bills, some that have already passed the House and some that are being considered in the Senate probably today. And those are House Bills 5231, House Bill 5232, House Bill 5233, House Bill 5234, House Bill 5269, which have, like I said, been passed. And then those that have been introduced in the Senate Ed Committee, Senate Bill 943, Senate Bill 944, Senate Bill 946, and Senate Bill 947 that align with resolutions that we've passed here at this board table and support our call for transparency. And so this resolution simply states that we support those bills, especially in this critical lame duck period.
So we have a motion, we have a second. Dr. Pugh has spoken to her motion. Is there any other discussion associated with the motion? Mr. McMillan.
I'll be voting no on adding it to the agenda. To be clear, these bills have nothing to do really with transparency. They have everything to do with trying to shut down charter schools, inhibit them. And really, it's because it's a paying homage to the union bosses who the legislators and governor count on to get elected. The members, Democrat members at this table count on to get nominated at convention.
This is about putting something on.
Yeah, and I'm explaining why I'm voting no. Thank you. It's clear that that this resolution is designed to support bills that protect the adults in the system, teachers, administrators, and the unions have fiduciary duty to care for them more than the students. That's clear. And so these bills are willing to sacrifice children in urban areas, including children with black and brown skin, and doom them, lock them in failing schools, and not give their parents an opportunity to save them, rescue them out of the failing schools. And it's all because the union bosses want to protect the adults in the system and sacrifice the children. So I will absolutely be voting no on these bills, on this resolution. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else to speak to whether to put this on the agenda or not?
Dr. Rice, and we'll probably discuss this more at length a little later, but these are bills that speak to, one, the fact that Michigan has the highest highest number of for-profit ran charters, that there is no parity and transparency.
None of them are for-profit.
And I will say
Period.
that at this
Excuse
table.
Me. You were uninterrupted. Please let her finish
interrupted
uninterrupted.
me.
I'm the chair.
Well, you interrupted me.
I'm the chair.
Okay, so your statement was
So
wrong.
we have put forward a FOIA. We've gotten data back that supports that there is not a parity as it relates to how these publicly funded schools are utilizing those funds. I know that you at least say that you care about dollars reaching the classrooms, reaching educators. We need to make sure that the dollars that taxpayers are putting out are making it to the classroom. Additionally, these bills look at leasing practices that are questionable at best. This is not about doing away with charter schools. You probably should read the bills.
Okay, so we have a motion, we have a second, we've had some discussion. Any other discussion about placing this on the agenda? Ms. Snyder?
Yeah, I'm going to vote no for adding it to the agenda as well, simply because we've had several resolutions that have come before this table in the last 8 years that I've served on it, asking for financial transparency in spaces like special education that would impact all of public education. And words that have come out of your mouth, Dr. Rice, is that dollars go to schools and not students. And so when we look at what it looks like to provide financial transparency in public education, it doesn't look like targeted financial transparency just for charter schools. It looks like total transparency in ways that will impact the education that all students in the state of Michigan get in public education. So looking forward to the discussion, but I can be, very blunt at this point in time. We've failed at many opportunities to provide financial transparency. And, targeted transparency like this screams and reeks of a desire to have power and control over money and not actually worry about what it looks like to get dollars into classrooms.
Thank you, Ms. Snyder. Any other discussion before we have a roll call vote on whether to place this on the agenda or not? Hearing and seeing none, if we could have a roll call vote on Dr. Pugh's motion.
Bullock,
Yes.
Lipton,
Yes.
McMillan,
No.
Pritchett,
Yes.
Pugh,
Yes.
Robinson,
Yes.
Snyder,
No.
and Tilly.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Any other motions to amend the agenda as initially presented? Ms. Lipton?
Yes, I move to add to the agenda a resolution on increased teaching and training about anti-Semitism.
We have a motion by Ms. Lipton. Do we have a second? Second from Dr. Robinson. Ms. Lipton, back to you to describe the motion.
This is just a motion that undergirds the fact that we do teach Holocaust and genocide education that was passed by the legislature, but there has been an alarming number of instances in the classrooms over the past year or so, and there's been a desire amongst teachers to have a little bit more information about anti-Semitism and the history of anti-Semitism as it pertains to hatred, and this speaks to that.
Thank you very much, Ms. Lipton. We've had a motion, a second, some discussion associated therewith. Mr. McMillan?
I do have some concerns about it. Maybe it can be ironed out during discussion, so I won't oppose it, but I'm going to pass on putting it on the agenda.
Okay, thank you very much. Anyone else on discussion about whether to put Ms. Lipton's motion on the agenda? Hearing and seeing none, if we could have a roll call vote, please.
Bullock,
Yes.
Lipton,
Yes.
McMillan,
Pass.
Pritchett,
Yes.
Pugh,
Yes.
Robinson,
Yes.
Snyder,
Yes.
and Tilly.
Yes.
Motion carries.
May I please have a motion to approve the agenda as presented? Ms. Lipton moves the agenda as presented, as amended. Dr. Pritchett seconds. Any other discussion associated therewith? Hearing and seeing none, if we could have a roll call vote, please.
Bullock,
Yes.
Lipton,
Yes.
McMillan,
No.
Pritchett,
Yes.
Pugh,
Yes.
Robinson,
Yes.
Snyder,
Pass.
and Tilly.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Board at 9:44, you have an agenda. At this time, Ms. Liz Evans, State Board Executive, will introduce members of the State Board of Education.
Good morning. You have just been listening to Dr. Michael Rice, Chairperson of the State Board and State Superintendent. To his left around the table is Board President Dr. Pamela Pugh from Saginaw, Board Co-Vice President Ms. Ellen Cogan Lipton from Huntington Woods, NASB delegate Dr. Mitchell Robinson from Okemos, Miss Nikki Snyder, and Miss Kelly Kuzmano, 24-25 Michigan Teacher of the Year. And now seated to my right is Mr. Tom McMillan from Oakland Township, Board Treasurer Mr. Marshall Bullock from Detroit, Board Co-Vice President Ms. Tiffany Tilley from West Bloomfield, and Board Secretary Dr. Judith Pritchett from Washington Township. Joining us virtually today is Ms. Emma Young, the staff member representing the Governor's Office.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. The public may register to provide comment during the public participation portion of the meeting at approximately 1 p.m. Those wishing to make public comment must register before 1 p.m. To provide public comment by telephone, please complete the registration form on the MDE webpage, www.michigan.gov/MDE. To provide public comment in person, please complete a green public comment form when you arrive here at the meeting location. These instructions are listed on the MDE webpage. Board members, the first item on today's agenda for the Committee of the Whole meeting is a presentation on career and technical education testimonials by Washtenaw ISD students, past and present. During today's presentation, we will hear from 4 students, 3 current and 1 former, about their experiences in career and technical education programs. The students will highlight achievements such as earning credentials and certifications, participating in competitions, developing leadership skills, working with state-of-the-art equipment, and engaging in work-based learning opportunities. Additionally, they will discuss how these programs have shaped their post-secondary plans, including pathways to college and career success. We welcome our presenters, Dr. Michelle Harmala, Deputy Superintendent in the Division of Educator Excellence, Career and Technical Education, Special Education, and Administrative Law, Ms. Lena Mills, Director of the Office of Career and Technical Education, Dr. Ryan Rowe, CPED Administrator and CTE Director for Washtenaw Intermediate School District, Richard, a former student at Lincoln High School, Shay, an 11th grade student at Ypsilanti Community High School, Dylan, an 11th grade student at Ypsilanti Community High School, and Taylor, a 12th grade student at Ann Arbor Huron High School. Go River Rats. Also present in the room today are Zuqueta Brown, CTE Coordinator from Ypsilanti Community Schools, John Kim, CTE Instructor at Ypsilanti Community High School, and Tom Panchera, CTE Director, Ann Arbor Public Schools. This is an informational presentation. No board action is required. Presenters, welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Rice, and I'm going to hand it right over to Ryan Rowe because we want to hear all about the programs and hear from our students.
Thank you very much, Board of Education members. Thank you for having us, Dr. Rice, Director Mills. So pleased to be here today to share with you success stories focused on our students, most importantly, and then share some information about Washtenaw County being one CTE desert in the state of Michigan. So I'll turn it over to Richard Brooks.
Good morning. I hope everyone is doing okay. I'm Richard Brooks. I went to Lincoln High School, which I graduated from, and I met a lot of fantastic mentors that have showed me fantastic ideologies and ways to incorporate skills into my life so that when I were to proceed from high school, I could do a lot better and implement that into my job. And then also I had gone through Selene's CTE program. I took Automotive Technology 1 and 2, and I am fully ASC certified, and I can be a full-on mechanic straight out of high school. And I've learned a lot of very, very valuable skills from my CTE program. And then I also had a engineering teacher in Lincoln High School who is currently working on some sort of CTE program, and I've learned a lot of engineering skills that I've been able to incorporate into my post-secondary school on to college. I currently work at Toyota Research and Development in the prototype department, and I'm a part of the FAME program, which is a very esteemed mechatronics program that is going to give me a degree in applied science. And it takes 10 people, and I'm a part of the second cohort in Michigan, the FAME Minton chapter. I think that's what it is, right? And pretty much everything that I am using right now, I've completely learned from my CTE program. It might be a little bit different, but I think the skill set and the how do you put it? well, the skill set that I've learned from high school has definitely benefited me into adapting and learning and applying. And I think those are very, very useful skills. From something as basic as showing up to school at a very early time in the morning, it showed me that hey, I need to get to work early in the morning, and pretty much everything CTE wise, career technical education, that I've learned in high school from the amazing mentors that I've had has definitely benefited and is prolonging my educate. They basically, like my mentors in high school, they told me, go get a degree, go apply yourself after high school. And a lot of people, they don't take what older people have to say into account. But I listened to the people that were, very valuable to me, such as my educators, and I took their advice, such as Richard Rowe, Ryan Rowe, and Tim Tomozik. And they really instilled a vision that they had of me that only I could bring to myself if I brought out, all the ideologies that they have brought to me. So I took that and I ran with it, and now I'm at Toyota Research and Development with the FAME program.
Thank you very much for sharing.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Taylor Neesmith. I'm a senior at Huron High School. This is my second year being in the culinary CTE program. I have, I'm so sorry.
All good.
Recently, I've become Serve Safe certified, and that's helped me a lot. And it's beneficial outside of school because in school, with my certification, we do staff lunches and we serve our staff to show that we appreciate them for what they do. And I get to reciprocate my certificate with any job that I work with, culinary wise, I get paid more. So that automatically puts me at a pedestal because I don't have any training. Working alongside my mentor, Chef Sam, Miss Goring, she's implemented communicative skills with me, team building skills. I'm able to have confidence with my team, knowing that I can lead them for what we need to do if we're making a meal. That hey, we need to do this to serve out the food, and like we can have no mishaps. Um, one second, I'm so sorry. This is embarrassing.
Take your time.
Thank you. This program has been beneficial to me in my knowledge and my training in the future of the culinary industry. Um, my junior year really impacted me. That was when I first joined the program. The second years around me, they were all moving around, they were hustling, she was telling them what to do. And that motivated me because at first I was undecided. I didn't know what career I wanted to take. And seeing all of them motivated me that I have to become them my senior year. So, which I did. And in doing that, I hope this instills for those next to come and they get to come here and also get to speak to you guys. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Shania Saga. I'm in 11th grade at Islamic Community High School. See, I just got into CTE programs, so I'm not really fond like them, but I can tell you my experiences. Um, Manufacturing is more of wanting to get your hands dirty, doing a lot of other things. All of the CTE programs, they give you an opportunity to start your career, and it shows you a lot of things that you have not learned. It gives you kind of like a heads up or a starting point. And me in manufacturing, I've did not know what to do with my career, did not know what to do when I graduate, so I started manufacturing. That's when we started building new things like scaffolding, aerial lifts, cut, brazing metal. We did all of the things that we did precision measurements. It started being, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. It's like, okay, we started learning on precision measurement, and then I think it was really a start for me saying that I think this is what I want to do for my career, and I think it's a better way of just getting on your feet. So, yeah,
Hey, what do you want to do? What has it led you to do you think, in the future?
I think the confidence and the dedication that my teacher had gave me, and he has actually been patient with me, knowing that there's a lot of things that is really hard to understand. But when you have the good teacher and a good assistant teacher, they tend to take things step by step and they go process and process, and then you start to become the person that you want to be. So, and going on, I think it's a good opportunity to have CTE programs because they give you benefit. They give you benefits, and the program that really want to take next year is like Launa. It's a good start that welding classes had gave me. So I think it's going to be a really good start.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dylan Presley. I'm an 11th grader at Ypsilanti Community High School. This is also my first year in manufacturing, but I have got a lot of good opportunities in manufacturing so far. And before I had this program, I didn't really know what I wanted to do after high school. I didn't know what I wanted to do in the future. And however, since joining this program, I feel like it gave me an opportunity, and it led me to a path that I didn't know I had, or opportunities I had, and it led me to manufacturing, and now I can go into engineering, and that's what I want to do. I want to be a controls engineer and be able to make a good living and just not struggle anymore. So I had Mr. Kim help me. He's a very good teacher and very structured, which I feel like everyone needs, because you don't want to be in a classroom or learn and you just get distracted easily. It's just a very good class. You get structure, and he can teach you in there. He's a really good teacher. He knows a lot of different ways to teach students, and I had him since my freshman year, so I understood him more. And I feel like he's helped me a lot since I've been in here in the program. So in manufacturing, we can earn a lot of certifications. I've earned almost all of my NC3, which is in precision measurement. I have done Tool and U, and I went to Skills USA to learn how to be a leader. So I can learn how to lead a team and learn different ways to be a leader, because you can't just lead a team in one way. There's a lot of people that learn in different ways, just like a classroom. And I'm just happy to have my teachers and the team at Ypsilanti Community High School to help me become an engineer in the future, because that's what I want to do.
Right.
Thank you.
It's really amazing what students discover when they have the opportunity to sit in a program, and they sometimes don't even know what those things are all about when you start, and then you discover certifications, you discover things about yourself and skills that you have, and so it's amazing that you got to do this. And thank you all for coming to tell us your story.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much, students. Board members, questions or comments? Senator.
Well, I applaud you all. It's like she said, it's amazing, like taking a chance on something and then unlocking something in your brain that says this is what I want to do. You know, we always get caught up in what I'm gonna do after high school, what's my 5, 10, 20-year plan, but sometimes we just trying to figure out tomorrow, right? And we're apprehensive about joining program, who wants to get in that, but you get in and you find out something clicks with you and you move forward in that. But it sounds like not only are you learning a discipline and a special skill set, that your instructors and mentors are also helping you pick up some life skills and how to navigate regular things outside of that. And so I applaud you guys for being able to pick up on those things.
Thank you, Senator. Ms. Snyder.
So I've shared at this board many times that I was in CTE when I was in high school as well. So I got my certified nursing assistant certificate through the health sciences program in Washtenaw. Loved it, and then eventually became a nurse. What I would say is, study really hard for that certification test. Make sure you take it as soon as you can after you complete the course. But what was your name?
Richard Brooks.
Richard. You are a very good public speaker.
Oh, thank you.
And all of you did really well, but let me just say one thing. You listened to the adults in your life because you're that kind of teenager, and then went into CTE, and I doubt you'll regret it. most teenagers listen to other teenagers. So use your voices to share your experience with students around you. I'm looking forward to talking about what it means to have a desert, not only in Washtenaw County, but in other districts around the state, and what we can do as a board to support you. But I think one of the biggest things is from student to student interaction, encouraging them to participate in a program is something that only people like you can do. You're here and you effectively shared your story with us. Go share it with other students, because most teenagers aren't necessarily listening to the adults around them, if you will. So that's how we can encourage participation in the long run. So tell your story.
Thank you, Ms. Snyder. Other, Ms. Kuzmano.
First of all, you guys did awesome. It's probably not easy to speak at a whole table full of adults first thing in the morning, am I right? But I just want to commend you. I think I want to echo what Ms. Snyder said. I would not only talk to other students, but I would talk to parents, because I think a lot of times parents may not know just the array of opportunities for students, especially at the high school level, that are available in all of these fabulous schools in Washtenaw County. I'm saying that because my twin is in Washtenaw County. But you have some amazing schools, amazing teachers that you've talked about, and I think it would be a wonderful opportunity for you to speak to parents about the programs that you're in and the opportunities that you're looking forward to. But awesome job. You're all rock stars.
Thank you, Ms. Kuzmano. Other reflections, other board members? Ms. Lipton?
Thank you for coming, all of you, for sharing your stories. I really, really appreciate it. The question I had is, what was, for all of you, what was your entrance point into the CTE program? In other words, was it a recommendation from a teacher? Was it through your guidance counselor? Was it through a friend? The reason why I'm asking is because in my experience, a lot of students that go to schools where there is a CTE program, they might not know about it or hear about it, so they miss out on taking it because it's maybe not offered in their building. They may have to go to like a regional CTE center. So if the school doesn't have a guidance counselor that tells them about it, they might miss out on it. So I'm just curious, in your program in Washtenaw County, what was your entrance point to even know about it or even hear about it?
That's an amazing question. Thank you for asking. So what led me to go down the automotive route was my best friend's dad is an engineer at Ford. And growing up from a very, very young age, I was surrounded by Mustangs and muscle cars. And I don't know about you, when you're 5 years old and you see that stuff, you're like, oh my God, it's a car and it's loud. And that was my thing. You know, I was like, I want to know how to build this kind of stuff, and I want to know how to maintain it. I want to know how to service it. I want to learn how to fix it. And so it really started off as kind of like a hobby, right? So I went over to his house, and me and his dad, we'd kind of work together, and we'd slowly build cars up from the ground up. And this was like a 1967 Ford Mustang and a 1987 Fox body. So I had very, very amazing prior, experience. But then I got to thinking, am I doing this the right way? Is there a better way to do this? And how can I incorporate, better ways into what I'm doing already? And how can I apply my knowledge so I can work towards a certificate? And I remember talking to my high school counselor, and she brought up, hey, our school has an amazing CTE program. And I was, a sophomore signing up for junior classes. And I'm like, what is CTE? And she explained it very well, career technical education. And I was like, okay, so that's where I learned to do what I want to do for a living, right? And she's like, yeah, 100%. So I signed up for the class, and I walked in, and I got probably the best education experience that I could have received. And, there was some hurdles and some challenges, but I think at the end of the day, it really built me to be who I am today. And you can really tell that I know what I'm talking about because I'm certified when I talk about it. And, Saline High School has an amazing CTE program. And that is all I have to say. And thank you very much for asking that.
Thank you. What about
Wish
our
I
other
knew I was
students?
talking about halftime.
Thank you.
My experience with joining the CTE program, at first I was confused because one, I was very interested in cosmetology. So down to I was still going to be in the CTE program, but my counselor, she told me that I could either do one or the other. I couldn't have both. So I went through like a 2 week process with my mind, like, do I want to do hair or do I want to cook? And my mom had told me, tell you can always do hair, you know, but you can't always get the training to learn how to cook. So so I just chose cooking, and that's where I've been.
I started my CTE programs or learning about it from my brother. He was in manufacturing since 10th grade. He did it with Mr. Kim for all throughout his years of high school. And then one day I'd asked, right before he had left, to me at the army, because he showed me all of the benefits that manufacturing that can get him, and he's actually doing one right now, or had gotten advice out of Mr. Kim. So he started doing automotive. Then that's when I was like, oh, I want to see what manufacturing is like. So I signed up, and as soon as I went there, we went straight to work. Went straight to doing a lot of projects. First, we did safety tests just to make sure we know all the safety hazards, all the precision measurements, all of the things that they really want us to know so we can get started on moving. And I think it was a great opportunity because it just showed me a lot of things that I was stuck at, that I had a lot of questions for, like, what is this? What is that? Now I know this is a caliper. This is, So I think it gave me a lot of power. Yeah.
I actually figured it out for my father because he was a operations manager at Ford, Chrysler, if I'm correct. And I was showed it in last year as a sophomore, and I was like, they introduced manufacturing to me, and I was like, oh, that's what my dad does. I see that he's doing good, so why don't I do that too? So, and I see Mr. Kim, and I was like, oh, this is all lined up perfect for me. I got my favorite teacher. My dad knows about it. I feel like it was I just feel like I fit in and I belong there.
Thank you for sharing those reflections, students. Thank you, Ms. Lipton. Other thoughts from board members, questions from board members? Ms. Tilley, then Dr. Pugh.
Good morning, and I want to say thank you all for coming, taking the time out of your day to present to us. Really great hearing about the program. Really excited about what you all are doing. I'm a big proponent of CTE, and I think it's just absolutely awesome and important that you all get this exposure. And you have the right to make your choices, what's going to fit for you. We've heard a lot of good things about the program, and I'm sure it's amazing. Wanted to know, what are some of your suggestions for improvements for the students coming behind you? How can the program be even better? Because I did hear there's challenges or whatever obstacles, which is normal.
I would say maybe more help in the classrooms. I would say that. And what I mean by that is maybe like 2 assistant teachers and then like the main teacher, because when I go in there, when I do tooling or NC3, the tooling you separate from the NC3, and then sometimes you have work orders, and it's just like it's kind of stretched thin if some more students need help, and we can't, like, the teachers can't really go help everybody if they need it. And I think everybody deserves the help that they need so they can make it to where they want to be in life.
Thank you.
I think also for that one, instead of talking about the teachers, I'd say the dedication of the students. They don't really put in dedication. So I say more participation in the works. Because it's not a class where you just gotta be boring. Sit down, play. It's not what we signed up for. We signed up to be creative, to use our minds, to actually be in a workplace where we can all get together and be like, oh, we just did this as a team. So I'd say dedication and a work balance where we're all limited in what we do. So just so not everybody is so everybody's participating, not feeling left out. We have groups, and yeah.
And to go off that, like, time management is very important. So, like, in my school, we only have 50 minutes. So, and then my cooking teacher, she teaches like 5 different curriculums. So, with one curriculum, the kids, they'll try to complete it, but then it's like, once when I come in, because I'm with her 5 hours out the 7 period day. So it's like when I come in, the next group that's like a whole different curriculum, they have to come in and then pick up on their task. So like we said, dedication, people applying themselves to it. So it's like you signed up for a CTE program, you have to know that this is something that you have to dedicate yourself to. So.
Those are some amazing responses. I was kind of listening. I think to add on to what those two said right there, I really think it comes down to the instructor and the student. If you're not determined to, and you're not, able to retain what you're learning, and you're not actually trying to apply yourself, you're not going to learn anything. I think that's probably the first thing that we can learn from what they said. Then another thing too, from personal experience, is when you walk into a CTE program, you have a instructor, and it's not just Celine, it's not just Lincoln, it's not just Ypsilanti, it's everywhere. When you step into a program, the reason you're stepping into it is because you have interest in that topic. So it's not like something you just randomly sign up for, like, hey, I'm going to jump into it because I have to fill in a credit. Maybe for some people it is that way, but I know pretty much everybody I went to school with for auto mechanics, it's not like they just walked in not knowing what was going on. It takes personal interest. It takes time. There's a reason why you're doing it. So you're always gonna have some idea when you start. But then these instructors, like, say a kid does come in not knowing what he's doing, because I saw like maybe one kid, and he picked up real quick because we had a fantastic instructor. And I think for teachers, they have to take in account that not everyone is going because they want to do it. They just have to fill out a credit. But I think because we have such amazing instructors nowadays and people that actually want to show up and teach and not just grab a paycheck, right? Because I feel like that's a huge problem we have in this industry is teachers showing up and just grabbing a paycheck and not actually teaching. So when we have teachers like Tim Tomozik at Saline High School who who loved to teach, he loved what he was doing, he loved sharing his information and all the stuff he's retained throughout his life. I think when you have people that actually want to put in the hard work, and I think when you have teachers that want to teach, I think it's an amazing combination because it goes hand in hand, and together that makes success. So thank you for asking that question again.
You're welcome.
I appreciate that.
Thank you all for your input and perspectives. One thing that we do as adults after programs or events or meetings, we debrief.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important to include student voices in that conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tilley. Dr. Pugh, bring us home.
You all are absolutely amazing. I'm just in awe with what you're doing, what you're learning, the fact that a path. You have mapped out a path for yourselves and know where you're going. I mean, that is just absolutely amazing and just a breath of fresh air. It sounds like all of you have had the encouragement, support of parents, friends, parents to about your choice around choosing a CTE. Are there any of your friends or peers that you talk to whose parents may not see the benefit of CTE or may think that it might put or just have issues with their children going in that path? And any thoughts there and what you would add or say to those parents?
I think that is also an amazing question, and I feel like that is a very real reality because I feel that colleges have really pushed not colleges. I feel that schools, high schools, elementary schools, everyone's been kind of brought up like, hey, you need to go to college and go get an office job, right? So when you have parents that are just in the office all day and they hear about these dangers and all these accidents that happen at these facilities, it's just kind of rolling in the back of their mind that maybe if my son or daughter goes into manufacturing or say they go into automotive or even cooking because there's knives and there's a immediate risk of danger because I feel like when you're a parent and you have a child or say you're like a family friend, someone you care about, you don't want them in those hazardous conditions, and it doesn't always have to be hazardous. I think that's why the career technical education is fantastic because it shows you the proper techniques. But no matter what you do in life, I think there's risk, and people are always going to tell you what the risks are, and they're never going to tell you what the rewards are. So I think, because I have heard that, because like when I was going into mechanics, and like, because I went to school for it, and then I also got a job at a shop, and I was around, dangerous chemicals all day, oil, gasoline, diesel, pretty much everything you could think of that is like not good for you. I was around it all day, and I was always told like, oh, this could be cancer causing. You don't want to, breathe in all the dirt and all that stuff. And I was always told about the risks. Some people talk down on it, but I feel that we need more support for, trade work, because if we have so many people going into office jobs and we don't have enough people going into the trades, what are you going to do when everyone works in an office? You don't have any buildings getting built. So I think we need to change the mindset of society to enforce and be proud of people for going into specialized employers. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you.
In my experience, I haven't really had any friends whose parents like denied the CTE program, since culinary is very it's a life skill. So even if you don't take it, everybody still needs to learn how to cook. So, but with the risk of being in the class, you have obviously getting cut, burned, all that. And to be honest with that, like
Richard?
yeah, like Richard said, you have to change your mindset and change it up and actually acknowledge the fact that, hey, my kid is learning something that's going to be beneficial for them in the future. Like when I'm not there, they know they can uphold themselves.
I don't really have friends that have parents that say that, but I do understand what these two are saying, because when you're in a CTE program, it depends, you're your own person there. So it depends if you want to listen, you want to do work, or you want to be, or anything. But oh my gosh. Okay. Sorry. I'm so sorry, I forgot.
That's all right.
Okay. But when you're doing CTE programs, it counts on as you as your own person with a teacher and a student teacher to help you go through the steps. But other than that, when you're doing work, you just have a supervisor there to watch you, but all of the work is in your hands, so it depends on if you,
It's up to you to do it.
but yeah.
That I know of, I don't think any of my friends' parents say that, but I think they do push college really hard. Since I was like 9, I think I always heard about go to college, play sports, and I feel like there's always another option besides that. And yeah, you can go to college and be an entrepreneur, have your own business, but with the CTEs, you can be a creator. You can create new things and new technology, and I feel like that's what we need more, so the world can move forward, because I feel like we're really just stationary.
Students, you rocked it out. You did a terrific job. Great job. Board, give them a round of applause, please. We thank you very much for your presentation. Happy holidays. Keep doing great things in your education.
Thank you.
You represented really well. And to the adults, Ms. Brown, Mr. Kim, Mr. Panchera, thank you very much for what you do. We appreciate you. Board, we are pivoting at 10:18 to a presentation on funding CTE, state overview and insights from Washtenaw County. During this presentation, there'll be an overview of CTE funding, both sources and uses of funds. The state-level presentation will conclude with a recap of benefits for students participating in CTE and the impact that additional funding would have on student outcomes. We re-welcome our presenters. Deputy Superintendent Dr. Michelle Harmala, Director of the Office of Career and Technical Education at the Michigan Department of Education, Ms. Lena Mills, and Dr. Ryan Rowe, the Career and Education Planning District Administrator, CPED Administrator, and CTE Director at Washtenaw Intermediate School District. Again, an informational presentation. Again, no board action required. Presenters re-welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Rice. We're going to kick off with some sharing from Selena Mills, and then Ryan will share about Washtenaw County specifically. Thank you so much. Go ahead.
All right, well, last time I was here, we talked a little bit about how CTE is a part of our educational system, yet we stand apart. And you heard that from our students. What we do in CTE programs is a little bit different than what you might do in a math class or an English class. So we're really working to expand those opportunities for students. We believe more students should have the opportunity to do that. But because we're a little bit different, we have required components in CTE. It can be really costly to run a CTE program. Last time we talked about how, though, that cost has a really great return on investment. Students walk out of a CTE program, they're more likely to graduate, they have credentials, they can earn post-secondary credits. So the investment that we put into those students in a program is amazing. But I want to talk to you about what the funding looks like for CTE, since it does tend to cost more. So we're going to look at some of those federal funding sources that we use. We're going to look at state funding sources, and then we're going to talk a little bit about what local funding sources might look like. Now, throughout this presentation, I'm going to give you some facts per student, so what the funding might look like on a per student basis, but I do want you to know most of the time that's not how CTE is funded. But I thought that that might help you understand what those dollars look like. So I'll point that out as we go. In general, our state and federal funding together looks like around $679 per student. But again, the cost to run a CTE program are much higher than that. And there's a lot of variety across funding sources. So when we start to look at those local funding sources, you'll see sometimes we have support in the form of a CTE millage. Sometimes we don't for those districts. So it's really uneven. And then there are also other sources of support that districts and ISDs may pull from. But again, not everyone has the same support for CTE. So we rely in CTE on federal funds, and those federal rules that come with those funds really guide what we do with a program. Last time we talked about those core components of a program, and these funds are used to get at those core components. So that classroom instruction, laboratory learning, work-based learning, and leadership. And you heard the students talk about some of those things. Those Perkins funds that were signed into law back in 2018 again, we refer to them as Perkins 5. And we share them with our post-secondary partners so that we can have somewhat of a seamless transition from secondary to post-secondary. Our students talked a little bit about that push for college. And even though they may not in CTE or in some of the jobs of the future go straight from high school into college, almost all of our programs require post-secondary training. And so we want them to see that seamless alignment. Now, these funds typically are allotted regionally, and I'm going to show you that in just a minute. But if we were to break these down by student, it would be roughly $200 per student. But again, they're not distributed on a per student basis. But with these Perkins funds, they are generated by looking at census data and by looking at poverty levels in the areas that we serve. So there's a 30-70 formula that helps to determine those Perkins funds. And then we distribute them across the state in 27 different regions, and you'll see those here. So the folks in these regions look at these funds and the activities that come with them to try to support all students at a higher level. And there's 7 different areas that they use these funds for. So you'll see some of those on your screen. There are required activities that our CPID administrators need to do on a regional basis to support all of their students. So there are things like looking at their programs and evaluating whether they're meeting the needs of their student and their community and their workforce. It's thinking about some of those academic and technical skills that students need to have and how they can further the development, how they can add credentials to their programs, and how they can increase career exploration and development even at those earlier levels so that more students have the opportunity for CTE. And then those 7 areas correspond with what we call state-determined levels of performance. So they spend their Perkins funds in these 7 areas that you'll see on the screen, And then we look at that data to determine, are we meeting the levels of performance that we've set for ourselves as a state, and that we report to the feds each year. So they're looking at their graduation rates and what they can do to further graduation, and they're looking at relevance for students. They think about academic proficiency and how they can support students in gaining those academic skills that will help them in the future. And then we also look at things like our non-traditional placement. Are we encouraging students in non-traditional places to go after the things that they really want and the careers that they're aiming for? And then we also look at program quality. So are we helping them get credentials? Are we helping them get that competitive advantage that they need for the next step in their life? And then we also have state funds. And we refer to some of these funds as added cost. So 61A1 funds we call added cost because they help support the added cost that you have of a CTE program. Districts are required to use some of their general funds to support CTE, but again, we know that CTE is really expensive. And so we realize that there's an added cost to being able to run that. So for example, on the screen, you'll see one of the automotive labs. In that automotive lab, you can see 2 hoists right there for vehicles. Each of those hoists run about $20,000 or more, and then the cost doesn't just stop with purchasing the hoist. Every year, they have to have an inspection to make sure that that hoist is safe, and the district also has to pay for that inspection. And that's one major piece of equipment in one CTE program. So we want to make sure that we're supporting folks in being able to run those. So those added cost dollars are figured based on student advancement through the program. We know that as students advance and they gain more skill in the program, there's more cost that comes with that. So you'll see on your screen, it's approximately $355 per CTE student. But again, that advancement determines what that cost actually is and what that reimbursement is. And then we have a few other sources of state funding. So we also reimburse our instructors or a portion of their salary because there's additional things that our administrators and our instructors have to be able to do. So if you're an administrator in a CTE program, you can receive some reimbursement for that. That helps them with the data and reporting and overseeing those quality indicators. Ryan's going to talk a little bit more about 61C, and I'll give you some information as well, but we did receive equipment grants from as far back as 2016 to help support some of those equipment needs in the program. And then we have 61D, additional payments. Those payments do truly go straight to districts, and they are on a per pupil basis. They run between $35 and $70 per student, depending on the program and whether or not it's a high demand field. And the intention of those funds was to support districts in sending students to CTE programs or supporting CTE programs within their district, or using that for transportation. So 61C was designed to help folks with equipment. When you start a CTE program, there's a lot of upfront cost, and you have to have all of that equipment in place before you bring students into your lab. So CPIDs and regions were able to get these 61C funds since 2016, and it's really varied throughout the years as to how they were distributed. Most recently, districts without a millage were the only ones that were eligible. And again, we have several folks across the state who have a vocational millage. That vocational millage really supports all of the additional costs of CTE. So it supports the teachers, the administrators, it supports the curriculum and the different things that folks need to be able to work in their classroom. It also can support transportation to get students to an area center or to another district if there's a program offered there and they have a consortium agreement. And then it helps us with the building cost and repairing the building and keeping that in shape. Right now, only 73% of our ISDs have a vocational millage. So we have some that don't have that. And of those who do, the amount that they're able to use varies. So it all depends on the millage that they levy and the tax base in their county as to what that millage generates for them. So again, it's not even an equitable funding across the state. Here on your screen, you'll see the ISDs that don't have a vocational millage. So these folks are operating CTE using those regional Perkins funds, their local funds, and then any additional state aid funds that they're able to get. But this means that they have to put their local dollars into the CTE program at a higher rate potentially, or they have less CTE programs because it's expensive to run. And then we also have 4 districts that sit within a millage county but don't participate in the millage. So they also have uneven participation, and they also have an additional challenge because their community has not been part of that millage. So again, 4 major components. It's that classroom instruction. It's also the laboratory learning that you heard the students talk about. They're working with real equipment that they would work with out in industry. They're getting that competitive advantage early because they're touching and using the very same things that they'll be using in the workplace. And then you heard about their leadership. They're also learning leadership skills. They're participating in activities that help make them a better employee. And then they have the opportunity to participate in work-based learning so that they have a chance to step foot outside their classroom or to work with mentors in the industry to really learn what it's all about, so that when they leave our classroom, they're ready for their next step. But again, all of those things have great outcomes. We have amazing graduation rates. We have students who are earning credentials. We have students with work-based learning experiences, but those things come at an additional cost. So this is the best way that I can think of to describe this to you. And as we look at growing CTE, we have to keep program quality a constant. We're held accountable to the federal government for those indicators and for those 4 components of CTE. So if we hold program quality constant, yet we want to grow the amount of programs, there's something that has to give. We were really excited. 25% of our students participate in CTE. But 25% isn't enough. They're not getting all of the opportunities if they're part of that 75% who haven't had an opportunity to be part of a CTE program. So if we want to grow program quantity, and we're holding quality constant, that takes the resources and the funding that we already have, and it stretches them even thinner. The instructors that we have, you heard students talk about, we need more instructors. We need more instructors. We need more funding for programs. We need more opportunities for students. So to grow those programs in Michigan, ultimately we need more funding and more support. Last time we also talked about where those CTE deserts were. Who doesn't have access to CTE? Who doesn't have as much access as we would anticipate? So what you see on the screen are our CTE deserts. Those are the areas with lighter colors in those counties. And then you'll also see highlighted here areas without a millage. And those are outlined in that bluish purple color. So you can see a lot of times those deserts correspond to areas that are lacking some funding for CTE. And then we also have opportunity gaps that we'll be talking about in the future. And those are where we may have CTE opportunities, but they're not the same for all groups of students. And so we need to look at that as well. So if we're able to grow CTE programs and if we can find more support and more funding for those programs, what it does is really helps us decrease the number of gaps that we have. It helps us to fill in those CTE deserts so that more students have opportunities to be part of our programs. And then that in turn contributes to those amazing outcomes. So it helps us increase our graduation rate. It helps us increase the number of students who have that competitive advantage by leaving high school with credentials that they can use for their post-secondary education or to walk right out into the workforce and get started. And then it will also help us to engage and inform our middle school students at an earlier level. You all asked our students that came today, like, how did you get started? How did you hear about CTE? We want more students to know earlier so that they have the opportunity to make those choices. And so they're not left with a couple weeks thinking culinary cosmetology, culinary cosmetology. We want them to really be able to make a choice and to make a choice early. So, thank you.
Thank you again for allowing us an opportunity to be here today, specifically the students to share their stories. We believe that in Washtenaw County, We want every single student to approach the graduation stage with an empowered and informed post-secondary plan. And although they may change that plan, as many as us did over the years throughout our career, we want them to approach the stage with the best, most value-added decision at that point in time. So how do we get there? Well, we happen to be, maybe surprisingly, one of those CTE deserts that we talk about. And that may surprise some people being in Washtenaw County, but it shouldn't. And those CTE deserts, like many deserts, come in many forms, although they all have some similarities, unique ecosystems, but some similarities. One of those is that CTE participation is less than anticipated in these CTE deserts. Often, there's tremendous disparity with students of color, free and reduced lunch, for students that qualify for free and reduced lunch, and students that are in smaller school districts. They also often don't have a center for the students to attend, and they certainly don't have a CTE millage, a vocational millage to support those efforts. Washtenaw County tends to be one of those. I have lived on both sides of the fence. I have a different perspective than most in that I was a CTE director in Lenawee County for 5 years and served as a local district superintendent in Lenawee County for 6 years. Lenawee County collects about $14 million each year through a vocational millage. We don't in Washtenaw County. Ann Arbor Public Schools has more students than Lenawee County in total. Now, that's not a knock on Lenawee County. It's the fact that we in Washtenaw County have to do better, and we will. I'd like to talk to you a little bit about that today. So I'd like to thank you and anyone else that has involvement in the 61C1 funding that Director Mills just spoke of. We went from, in these 4 consortiums, right here, the map that was handed out to you, we operate in 4 different consortiums. We have 9 districts. 6 districts operate together in the Southwest Washtenaw Consortium. Chelsea, Dexter, Manchester, Milan, Lincoln, and Saline schools work together in a consortium. Ann Arbor Public Schools operates on their own, Ypsilanti Schools operates on their own, and Whitmore Lake operates on their own. We used the funds before you today over the course of 3 years to expand programming for students that needed it the most in the areas that we needed to expand CTE programming, specifically Ypsi, Lincoln, the east side of Ann Arbor, Whitmore Lake, and Manchester, and I'll tell you why those were chosen as we go through the presentation. Without that funding, we could not have expanded and launched 13 new CTE programs this school year. But that funding no longer exists. So for us in Washtenaw County, we rely on our Perkins grant funding that Director Mills spoke of. That's a little less than $500,000. And our added cost funding is about $800,000. So you're talking about $1.4 million that we operate on every year with 71 CTE programs. Ann Arbor Public Schools alone, the salary benefits, FICA retirement for CTE teachers alone in Ann Arbor Public Schools is $3.5 million. So that money's coming from the general fund. We also took advantage of a Section 11X6 grant, that's Consolidation Studies grant that was administered by the state. That was $250,000 for us in Washtenaw County to study the level of inequities that exist in Washtenaw County. What did we spend those funds on? Well, most notably, we commissioned the U of M Youth Policy Lab to do a deep dive on the inequities that exist, where they exist, and how we might address those. Based on that, those findings that I'll present to you in just a minute, we applied for the consolidation of services, specifically career technical education and career exploration in Washtenaw County, and we received $5 billion to initiate a very aggressive, deliberate, and intentional plan over the next 12 months to find out what system, equitable system of CTE we can offer, and then recommend a financial model to support that system. So our U of M Youth Policy Lab relationship goes way back. It didn't happen just because of the Consolidation Studies grant. It started back in 2019 with Superintendent Norman at the Washtenaw ISD. And Superintendent Norman asked, what is the level of inequity that exists within Washtenaw County in 2019? This is pre-COVID. The findings were that there's a widespread, lack of widespread familiarity with CTE offerings. So awareness was mentioned earlier regarding how do we educate the students, maybe more importantly, the parents on the opportunities that exist. Washington ISD CTE courses align with emerging occupations. That should come as no surprise. We have a robust economic area within Washtenaw County. Stakeholders expressed a desire to expand programming. Certainly when you look at the map and where those programs are located and who has access, it's not equitable. And the recommendations below were to remove the barriers to equitable access, increase transportation, which is an issue everywhere throughout the state, increase awareness to CTE opportunities, explore current and future funding opportunities, which we're doing today, and look to expand programming. So that was in 2019. Next, the state actually looked to the U of M Youth Policy Lab, and they looked at career and technical education in Michigan access and participation as a whole, not just Washtenaw County, but as a whole. And you could see the key findings. Approximately half of Michigan students enroll in at least one CTE course. Female, Black, and economically disadvantaged students are less likely to participate. More than 500,000 skilled trade jobs are expected to become available in Michigan through 2026. And while many of our CTE programs align with these high demand fields, some exhibit low participation and completion rates. This prompted us at the ISD to go right back to the drawing board and say, we know there's inequities. We've studied that in 2019, but what is the supply and demand in Washtenaw County? Perhaps some of these school districts don't even have a demand for CTE opportunities, or do we have a supply issue that we can't provide a health science program to the students that want it the most? They found that demand for CTE is equal across districts. Students from every district participate at high levels when they have easy access. And off-campus or neutral site programs offer a way to test this idea. Neutral site locations would be a CTE program housed at Washtenaw Community College, a building trades program in partnership with Habitat for Humanity, a cosmetology program that's at a neutral site location. So in 22, the state went back at it. How access to CTE varies across Michigan schools and students. Again, this was not a Washtenaw ISD specific report. This was a state report that noted economically disadvantaged Black and Hispanic students have less overall access. They're likely to attend schools with at least one CTE program, less likely. Total program availability in school and via travel is greater for all demographic groups and districts with CTE designated property taxes. So if you have a millage, you're most likely not a CTE desert. And these districts exhibit smaller SES and racial gaps in CTE access. And finally, CTE participation and completion rates are significantly higher in schools with on-site CTE programs, which prompted us. What are we going to do in Washtenaw ISD to address the inequities that we know exist, that the state has proceeded with, that the U of M Youth Policy Lab? Let's use our consolidation studies grant findings, apply for funds so that we can address what we know exists and so that we can move forward to establish an equitable system of CTE. And by CTE in Washtenaw County, we refer to this as experiential and applied learning, which includes CTE pre-K through 12th grade, what I refer to as the continuum of care of experiential and applied learning. When I talk about students approaching the graduation stage of high school and determining what's the best post-secondary plan for them at that point in time, I'm hoping they've had numerous experiential and applied learning opportunities to affirm the fact that they want to do this at that point in time, or perhaps they don't want to do that before they go off and bury themselves in debt. So we commissioned the report, which states all students in Washtenaw County from every economic group have access to fewer programs on average when compared to the state. Economically disadvantaged Black and Hispanic students have less overall access to CTE programming compared to their more affluent and white peers. And access is dependent on which district and building a student attends. Again, economically disadvantaged Black and Hispanic students are less likely to attend schools with at least one on-campus CTE program. So when you look at specific to Washtenaw County access by race and ethnicity, our white students are roughly 3 times more likely to have access to 10 or more programs to any other racial group. And Black and Hispanic students are more likely to have access to 3 or fewer programs. When you look at access to the programs, in general, Washtenaw County has access to about 9 programs on average, which is notably fewer than what we have in the statewide average. But when you look at our demographic groups, you can look at it at an even deeper lens. Free and reduced lunch, staggering disparity. About 45% of our free and reduced ineligible, those that don't qualify, have access to 10 or more programs compared to only 24% of free and reduced eligible students. Free and reduced eligible students are approximately 2.5 times as likely to have access to 3 or fewer programs than their more affluent peers. You can see how, even on this chart, if you qualify for free and reduced lunch, or those districts or buildings that do, how the level of access decreases as that level of free and reduced lunch increases. And then enrollment size. Students that are at smaller enrollment size districts are a much greater disadvantage to having access to state-approved CTE programs. So I would say this: if you're a student of color, you're at a tremendous disadvantage to accessing CTE programs. If you're a student who qualifies for free and reduced lunch, you're at a tremendous disadvantage. If you're enrolled at a smaller enrollment size school, you're at a tremendous disadvantage. What if you combine all three of those? That's what we're looking to address today. So out of that $5 million, we're looking to hire positions, launch pathways, and do communication, marketing, and awareness to build an equitable system of CTE. When you look at this chart right here, out of the 71 CTE programs that exist, not one of these 71 programs, not one is accessible to students from all 9 districts. Not one. If you want to go to collision repair at Ypsilanti and you're not an Ypsilanti resident, or Lincoln resident, you don't attend. So when we look at positions, we look at a countywide coordinator of CTE programming, a countywide coordinator of work-based learning to connect businesses with families, with school districts and business leaders. We look at a coordinator of special populations. What about our students who are gifted and talented, or at alternative education programs, or are in non-traditional fields? So we're hiring these positions out of the grant to launch these and showcase what's possible. We're launching centralized county-wide pathways like aviation and aerospace, EV mobility, a best leadership academy that's business, entrepreneurship, sports, and tourism for students coming out of the junior level CTE program that want to start a business of their own. In our construction trades program. So we're going to launch ideal pathways and take the barriers out of that. And hopefully these will be transferable models that we can have and copy and duplicate elsewhere throughout Washtenaw County. And then finally, we're using funds to, Hanover Research will be in Washtenaw County. We talked about student voice and choice. They will be meeting with students at Ypsi, at Lincoln, and at Scarlett Middle School tomorrow and Thursday on focus groups and with business industry leaders countywide, parents on the east side of Washtenaw County, parents on the west side of Washtenaw County, gathering data on what they feel is important regarding experiential and applied learning, including CTE. We're going to do a report to the community based on that data. We'll hold a countywide summit in March, and then we'll look at ways in which we can recommend an equitable system of CTE and hopefully a financial model. That financial model may include some sort of vocational millage. A $500,000 in Washtenaw County is $10 million a year. We're going to certainly look to our post-secondary partners who are at the table today. Washtenaw Community College, Eastern Michigan, U of M are certainly at the table talking to us about this work. And then we're going to do some polling and see where we land. And by November 2025, that will be our decision day on a recommended model of equitable CTE programming for all students in Washtenaw County and a recommended financial model to sustain that programming. Again, thank you for the grant funds. We would not be able to study this without those. And we hopefully will be communicating this to the statewide CTE directors and CPID administrators to showcase what did work and certainly the challenges that we faced on this journey. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Rowe, Ms. Mills, Dr. Harmala. We appreciate your presentation. Board members, questions or comments? A lot to chew on. Ms. Snyder.
I've got a lot, so I might come back and forth, but let's go back to, I think at some point in time you mentioned out of the, you've shown all of the districts that don't have millages that are most likely also CTE deserts because there's an overlap. have we brought, business partners to the table? Is there an incentive for them to give to a foundation and get philanthropic dollars for equipment or, basic things that help to plug the holes until you get more of a stable way of funding? Is that something that they're willing and interested to do?
I can talk about Toyota after you. Go ahead.
Okay. So statewide, that's really done on a very local and regional level, and we have some amazing business partners out there. Sometimes the biggest challenge that we have is businesses would like to help but don't know how, and districts need help but don't know how to communicate that. So our challenge has been communicating those things.
Facilitating that conversation.
So it really depends on the region as to what that partnership looks like.
Okay. Is there a mechanism, a tax-based incentive mechanism for businesses to do that currently, or no? So that when you try to facilitate the conversation, they understand not only is this beneficial to your industry, but there is a pathway with which you can consider it financially responsible for your business. Does that make sense?
Does that make sense? I'm not aware of one, but there may be some things out there, and we can certainly do some more looking into that.
Okay, so that's just, something that came across my mind when we were talking about the, not having millages in certain districts and what it would look like to facilitate that conversation. Gosh, I have more questions. Have you been in marketing? Is there a way that by the time you're ready to have the millage conversation, if you choose to within that district, the whole conversation with students this last presentation was, how did you know? And, our parents embracing and opening up to the idea of CTE. How would they know if they don't know? And how would students know if they don't know? So there's a sense of, is there marketing that's happening on some level? And I know that marketing, it can be an interesting word, but that is quite literally what needs to happen. Not just, a flyer that comes home with the student that the parent may or may not get, but they're actually seeing it in public spaces before they can entertain exactly what are you talking about when you say a vocational millage. So if they so choose to value that, they have some pre-knowledge of it.
So I can just talk about the work that we're doing at the ISD with our funding from the consolidation grant. Is the Hanover study will take place right now, the focus groups. The survey will be administered countywide to business industry, community leaders, parents, educators, and students. We'll have voice and choice in that. Based on all of that data will be collected, we're working with a firm, a marketing firm, because we do not have marketing and branding for countywide CTE in Washtenaw County, nor do we do a good job even at the consortium level. So we'll be investing funds in that, along with marketing materials with the report to the community, so that we build a better awareness of what is being offered and what the opportunities are there.
Okay. I think I have more questions, but that's my first bite, if you don't mind.
Thank you, Ms. Snyder. Ms. Lipton.
Thank you all for the presentation. And I have to say, the issue of inequities in our funding was really, really brought home when we look at CTE and the need for, at least in my mind, a stable, equitable system of funding. I have a couple of specific questions. The 679 per student that you identified as being, I think that was just coming from Perkins, I believe. Is that over and above the base funding that a school district gets? What does that reflect? What is the context for that?
So that Perkins funding is federal funding that's distributed on a regional level. So when we looked at those 27 regions across the state, it's really not even per student. It's based on that formula between the population and the number of folks within that region that are more economically disadvantaged. And then that funds to the region, but it doesn't actually get down to the individual student, so it's not a per student count.
Mm-hmm.
And it's used broadly to support CTE. So that $679 number was really to show you, like, some folks think that we have federal funds, it's a windfall. but it's really not that. It's a
Okay.
very small amount of money if you were to average it by student to look at supporting programs that are really expensive to run.
So when we did the school, the SFRC collaborative, so that was something I worked on when I was in the legislature, making sure that we had sort of a costing out study and some base understanding of what are the true costs of educating a student in Michigan. At that time, I don't recall them looking, I think they identified at a later date transportation and CTE. Has that, I don't know, study or knowledge through additional iterations of the School Finance Research Collaborative study given any additional guidance in terms of statewide, what an additional, if we ever funded it on a per pupil basis, what that amount should look like?
And you mean specific to CTE, right?
Yes.
Yeah, to my knowledge, no, but I'll let other experts in the room if they know. To my knowledge, there's been no additional SFRC specific to CTE.
That is correct.
Yeah.
That SFRC suggested a weight for CTE students, an additional 10% for CTE students above and beyond a base funding, which was substantially higher than the base funding that we had when SFRC was written. But there has been no updating of that. You could update that for inflation. It wouldn't be overly complicated to do.
You know, because it occurs to me from having like looked at this now, you know, going back to say 2008 when I got into the legislature, you know, when you have a system of funding that has built-in inequities, it makes it difficult to sort of extrapolate equity from that. So I'm very sympathetic to the notion of, and I think you're going about it the right way in terms of trying to encourage a regional millage for Washtenaw ISD, because I come from Oakland County. We do have a very robust CTE millage, and it supports 4 regional CTE programs, which then have the added benefit of drawing businesses to that. It's sort of like if you build it, they will come. And so, but built into that, when you do something ISD level, again, students in Oakland County are very, very grateful and benefit from the investment that the county has made. But it does bring to light the fact that when you have a funding system that is so based on a regional or county-based millage, of course you're going to now have inequities throughout the state. So it does at least cause me to think that some sort of base state level of funding might need to be built into our funding formula to deal with CTE. And then, of course, if counties want to then add on to that, certainly under a local control model, they can certainly do that. But I do think that based on the current funding system we have, inequities are inevitably built into that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lipton. Other reflections from other board members? Ms. Tilley.
Thank you. With the millages, I know you said there are some districts that are not participating in the millages. Why is that? What are the barriers, challenges? Has MDE tried to work with those districts to help support in any way that you guys can with information or whatever?
Those districts that have a countywide millage and the district doesn't participate, most of them applied for a millage and did that in their community a long time ago. And so not all of those districts opted into that option. So then you have a county that some districts have millage funds, the others don't. The challenge now for some of those folks is there are a lot of other parts of educating students that are also expensive. So in some cases, they have to decide, are we going to ask for a millage for CTE, or are we going to support something for special education? Or are we going to support something for, for something else that we need in the district? And that's a real challenge. So I don't know that as MDE, we've done anything to encourage that, but in CTE, our administrators have stood alongside those folks and helped support in any way that we can, and help to encourage that, and then help to build CTE programs if possible and offer opportunities where we can in those districts, so that we have students that at least can have some options, even if they don't have the same options as their neighboring districts.
I would suggest maybe, and I don't know how long ago it's been, but maybe having some of those conversations, because you get new administrators, they may not know, or it may not be top of mind even if they do know. So that might help. We definitely need additional funding. Is there something that we can do to support as a board that we have not done to use our bully pulpit to try to get additional funds?
I think your support in general of CTE, and then of any requests that we have to support programs through additional funding and through additional support, would be immensely beneficial. So,
is there anything in specifically that we could do that we haven't done? Or if you need time to think about that, that's fine.
We appreciate that. Thank you. Senator.
I'm assuming you did. I know in Detroit, outside of DPSCD, the city, the mayor went to the corporations and had them adopt each of the vocational centers for, I would say, infrastructure needs, more or less. Like the Illich Foundation put up $100 million, or, Dan Gilbert and them adopted Randolph Center. There was a conversation for them to take away that cost of the equipment stuff and the infrastructure thing. So I don't know, like, who's that leading corporation or in each of the districts that they can, but some way, because, having to do that outside of the school system is going to be an imbalance, but there's an institutional imbalance about it anyway, especially in urban America. So we were trying to play catch up. And so some of these things, and then now the kids eat for free. So that cost is gone, but they still haven't invested in that. They'll come up with another shell game or so let's figure it out.
Appreciate that.
So, Senator, across the state, businesses do contribute to CTE programs, as you point out. But as you also point out, it's different to be in Wayne, Oakland, Macomb, Washtenaw, than it is. That's right. Yeah, that's exactly right. And I can think of a couple of jurisdictions that were very proud of their CTE programs, notwithstanding the fact that they were very small. And I can remember one person who took me into a makerspace area, and this was a CTE program of sorts for them. It wouldn't have been elsewhere. It was for them. And to your point, some don't have the tax base to generate the millage. Some may not have tried to get a CTE millage, but others may have tried, and their tax base simply can't accommodate it. You can't make it happen solely with residential. It's very hard anyway.
Yeah, I thought we were all just like and everyone spoke on it. It's like looking at those numbers about who doesn't have a millage, and then the 4 that's in counties that have millages, but they don't get the millage or don't use the millage. So like those things just, I think, is rolling in everyone's heads about how do we kind of level that playing field somehow, some way.
Well, and part of the reason for the focus on CTE at this table is to raise the primacy of the issue of the area, and to generate more attention and more funding for it. There are, you mentioned the $1.4 million, but your local school districts pay for the opportunity on a per pupil basis to use CTE programs. I think, though, while that certainly embellishes the CTE budget, it's at the expense of other programs. And your point is not that you don't have CTE programming. Your point is that you can and should have greater CTE programming, number one. And Ms. Mills' point is it shouldn't be at the expense of your other programming, both of which both arguments I agree with. So, please.
I believe and the students also, especially the young man that was sitting on Rich, for generations, we promoted the go to college, go to high school, go to college, get a job, go to college. But we didn't really promote, it's not sexy, it's to promote being a plumber or mechanic. And so those things kind of fell by the wayside. But now we're shifting back, and it's going to be a task to shift back, because for a while, the only people promoting trades were for pay.
Right.
And then you didn't have a job at the end. So there's some convoluted ideology in there.
Well, and I agree with that, and I think we ought to be promoting the breadth of what gets our kids to their dreams, whatever those dreams are.
Absolutely.
And when you look at the governor's 60 by 30 goal, which is our sixth goal of the top 10 strategic education plan, 60% of all adults, 25 to 64, having a post-secondary credential, not necessarily a college degree, but a post-secondary credential by 2030. And that includes certificates of achievement and certificates, as well as 2-year and 4-year degrees. So, CTE really helps in all 4 of those areas. Some are just simply focused on the 4-year institutions. We love our 4-year universities. That's terrific. But that's not the only way you can have a path to a strong career, self-sufficiency, independence, and happiness in life. And I think that's really what we're saying. And I think you're saying very much the same way.
Well, yeah. I mean, I grew up, like I said, it's not sexy, it's not. But more or less, I would say that the young man who's, he said it's good paying, is a lot of the trades and the CTE skills pay probably more. See, if I go to school for 4 or 6 years, get a master's degree, and only making $80,000 as a principal, I'm just talking numbers, but I become a plumber and I can make $120, $130 on my own without even being unionized. I'm doing a little better in a shorter period of time.
We need them all, without a doubt. There's no question about that. Thank you very much, Senator.
I'm advocating for the CTEs, right?
I am. Well, I am as well. That's why they're here today. Ms. Kuzmano.
First of all, thank you, because this is very informational. From a teacher lens, do you see, like from my friends that work, in CTE or run CTE programs, they say they have a challenge getting teachers for these specialized programs because the private industry pays more. And so, and you have the added wrinkle that is teaching, and so I'm wondering, have you talked about kind of that hurdle? Because I feel like it's a major one.
Yeah, I talk with the local superintendents continuously about restructuring and looking at contracts, and that we can give folks that come out of business industry to teach the steps that they deserve. And so we've not only found some very, very talented individuals that never thought about education that are now exemplary teachers that, by the way, look like the students they serve. And that's important.
That's important in all of our schools.
Right.
And you're right, it is important in CTE. It actually changes the mix of young people that have an interest in the programming, without a doubt. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate you raising that issue. We're at Second Bites, and Ms. Snyder was first for Second Bites, and then Ms. Tilley for Second Bites. Ms. Snyder, then Ms. Tilley.
One of the things I thought about during this conversation of where there are barriers overcome relates to transportation, and especially for, rural Michiganders. I mean, I'm a woman that has spent most of my life in Michigan living rurally. And when I graduated from high school and got that CNA certificate and went to nursing school and worked night shift, sometimes 2 or 3 jobs at the same time, I had to overcome barriers that came with that. And that included online learning. When it was first brand new and people thought it was really a bad thing, but I did like a history course online, and some of our nursing courses were only offered online. So I'm just thinking, how much have CTE programming or programmers and curriculum developers thought about what it would take to do like maybe some online programming where the student can still go to their home district where transportation is less of an issue and do some of that online programming and then still have access to transportation outside of school in a way that's strategic and resource allocation friendly, if that makes sense. I don't know, because again, what it takes to have access to opportunity is sometimes just overcoming those barriers in a very creative way.
We've looked at that for the past 2 years. We actually were lucky enough that the pandemic forced us to look at some of those things in a new and unique way. And we looked at those options with our post-secondary partners as well. So we do have program opportunities for distance learning and for some virtual learning within our CTE programs. The challenge is meeting that laboratory learning. And the challenge also comes from industry. In some industries, you can't completely learn online. So we're looking at what that blend looks like, and we're moving forward this year in looking at how we might promote some unique models to folks within CTE that might help break down those barriers of access. Even if it helps them get part of a program done for students without that transportation issue, that still lets them start the program or get pieces of it, and then we can start to figure out the other pieces.
Very good.
Thank you, Ms. Snyder. Ms. Tilley.
A couple of things. One, I want to suggest that we start tailoring our conversation because we talk about CTE in college a lot of times as if it's either or.
Yeah.
When CTE is an important pathway for college-bound students.
Right.
Because if they can get that associate's degree while they're in high school, or they can get college credits, it can shave off time for their college degree, and which is going to be really important for those students that are in poverty, that need to go to work sooner when they graduate. So I just think that we need to really tailor that conversation and the way that we promote that and consistently, because I hear it a lot. And then, and even the young man who spoke about going into engineering, needing those or taking those classes. That's a good stepping stone. Or when Nikki mentioned about she became a nursing assistant first, and then that sparked her into going into nursing. Another thing I wanted to ask about as far as the marketing goes, I'm sure you do open houses. How does that work? How do you guys do that? How successful are they? I know as a parent, taking my daughter to the CTE open house, that really helped us learn about the programming, very exciting. She decided after all not to go into it because of the transportation limitations, but I think that open houses are really a great way to reach parents.
I do too, and I'll just tell this quick story that I'll often see students walking in with their shoulders held high, and they're excited about showing their folks about computer integrated manufacturing or engineering technology, mechatronics, nursing, culinary, and their parents are kind of lagging behind as they come into the open house. And by the time they walk out, it's the parent that wants to enroll. It's why wasn't school, the saying, why wasn't school like this when I was in school? And so the power of sight, seeing is believing. So I agree with you 100%. Apprenticeship fairs, open houses, really it's the power of sight. Yep, agree with you 100%.
How successful are they? I know that people are excited by the time they leave, but how many parents are we getting out to the open houses?
Yeah, I don't have the exact numbers, but I know that they're highly, highly attended.
Okay.
To make just what your daughter did, to determine this is the right fit for me or not.
Yeah.
And all we want them to do is show up so that they can make an informed decision. And so I think we have a high rate of participation in those events.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tilley. The issue of segregated pathways is a long-standing issue, and we battle it not simply in-state, but across the country. And that is not accurate, that these are segregated pathways at all. They cross-pollinate, to mix metaphors, on a regular basis.
Yeah.
So yes, it's a continued struggle to redefine CTE and CTE programming. I agree with that. Thank you for bringing
And that's an important conversation for going after more funding for CTE.
Without a doubt,
as well.
without a doubt. Amen. Thank you very much. Dr. Pritchett, bring us home.
Thank you. Thank you, first of all, for explaining the funding. I, too, was a local superintendent and worked at the ISD level. CTE funding is very complex, only because of, do you have a millage, do you not have a millage, added costs, et cetera, et cetera. So thank you. As we start to work through, how do we better communicate to try to get more support across the state? My only other comment is those ISDs that do not have millages, I don't want anybody to walk away thinking they don't have programming.
That's right.
There is lots of collaboration that goes on within all of these ISDs as far as transporting kids from one district to another who may be able to have the program or has been able to find qualified staff to offer the program and provide as many opportunities for our students as possible. So again, there's a myriad of reasons why they don't have millages, from having to make difficult choices about, are we going to fund special ed at a different level, or are we going to fund CTE, or are we going to fund XYZ? So, but I appreciate you going through and explaining once again the intricacies of CTE funding. Very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Pritchett. Presenters, you did a terrific job. Thank you so much. It's a very, very complex topic. We're going to keep the lights on this topic, on this issue, and continue to explore and to try to make it a little bit simpler for the average person. It's not simple, but this is our system, and we have a responsibility to lay it bare so that we're able to better improve upon it. Thank you very much. We appreciate all three of you. Board, we are sitting at 11:17. We're going to pivot to the last of the presentations for the morning. Next item on today's agenda is a presentation on MySTEM current efforts and updates. This presentation by members of the MySTEM Advisory Council will highlight the success measures over the course of the last year in STEM education for Michigan educators and students. Presenters will also share the planned opportunities for expanded 3P, place, project, and place-based learning across Michigan. We welcome our presenters, Dr. Delsa Chapman, Deputy Superintendent of the Division of Assessment, School Improvement, and Systems Support, Ms. Megan Schroben, MySTEM Executive Director, Michigan Department of Labor and Economic Opportunity, and Ms. Sarah Sherpicki, Chairperson of the MySTEM Advisory Council. This is an informational presentation. No board action is required. There may, however, be a pop quiz. Presenters, welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Rice, and good morning, Board. We are here today to share current efforts and updates from our statewide STEM initiative implemented through the work of the MySTEM Network and the MySTEM Advisory Council. We will share the statewide STEM strategy and its alignment with state and federal, student goals, along with the metrics over the past year, classroom and community impact, and we will close today with the intended next steps to further opportunities for STEM education in Michigan. The first section of the presentation today will focus on the statewide STEM strategy. First off, we have just a little bit of historical context to share. As noted here, MySTEM involves convening, connecting, and coalition building by way of the governor-established council, the MySTEM Advisory Council, which is comprised of 15 members representing the Department of Labor and Economic Opportunity, or LEO, the Office of 60 by 30, the Michigan Department of Education, the Workforce Board, and educators from across this great state of Michigan. As a council, we established and executed the statewide STEM strategy with the responsibility to collaborate with LEO and MDE to release STEM grants, promote 3P learning, and partner with business affiliates to enhance the teaching and learning of STEM education here in Michigan. And we do this by a regional framework, and the regions are noted on the graphic on the screen. In general, we know STEM is defined as science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, delivered in an integrated fashion using cross-disciplinary learning experiences that also includes language arts, performing arts, and fine arts, along with career and technical education. So we will definitely see some connections here that we were just presented by our CTE presentation today. The MySTEM network expands the definition by ensuring shared leadership and alignment with interagency goals that you see noted here on the screen. This often results in meaningful learning based on our mission as a council to develop and support a generation of innovators who create more inclusive and prosperous businesses and communities here in Michigan. And now our MySTEM lead, Executive Director Megan Schraben, will share with us our statewide STEM strategy.
So these are really some items that have boiled up across our state or in our conversations and what we've been learning. And our state STEM strategy is really connected to that intersection of not only our MDE Top 10 Strategic Education Plan, but we also in this last year as a state developed and adopted a state workforce plan. And there's a federal STEM plan as well as the U.S. Department of Education's You Belong in STEM initiative. So we're really looking at how do we organize and strategize, as it also showed you on the previous slide, in order to bring all actors to the table in order to move forward one state STEM strategy. And where do these pieces really intersect? Okay, and we really want to move from this idea of competition between partners or stakeholders and even like individual disciplines to how do those actually work together in authentic ways to move forward all of our communities and all of our students. And this is really what I hope you'll see on our slides and throughout our presentation today, that our strategy is really looking at how do we support thriving across various systems, and how does our state STEM strategy and then our regional infrastructure help us to make this sustainable. So we do this through 3 different grant-funded lines, and we continue to organize across these so that we can really get to and meet every part of the system. So our culture change grants, or our playbook grants, we talked a little bit about last time, it was a little over a year ago that we presented. You might have heard us speaking about our playbook efforts. So it's about how our local communities and their districts implementing the state STEM strategy, and how those different players at the local level play a role in that, right? And so our advisory council grants are really where we get some programmatic funding, but looking at this from a state level, right? We have various institutions and organizations such as Michigan Women Council of Technology, right? Or our Intermediate School Districts Association, right? Or our principals associations, our societies of like retired engineers, right? There are all of these kind of acting statewide infrastructure pieces. How do we, again, collectively act together in order to move forward one state STEM strategy? So that really creates a plan across science and engineering, mathematics, and computer science and technology. So we can say, okay, what are we doing now? What's the future we want to end up in? And create a plan with all of those statewide acting partners to move forward. And then our regional grant as well is to make sure that we have this regional infrastructure in place, right? And they're really operating at the nexus of all these pieces. So knowing what local communities are doing in terms of their local implementation of STEM, and being able to bring the resources from those different state networks and local or regionally to the table to help continue moving that forward. So we continue to organize across these 3 different grant line items, and really anyone who is committed to this state STEM strategy is invited to be part of Michigan STEM or My STEM. So it's a collective impact opportunity. So let's move forward, Delta. So as we look more specifically as what are those state and federal alignment pieces that we are moving forward. Let's go to the next slide. We first wanted to maybe remind or bring up, make it present right now. We're really looking at how can MDE and LEO lead, and be a model for our other state agencies as well in efforts. And when you delve into these, this is what I was talking about earlier, our driving questions is really how do we help, and what I hope you pick out of this, it's students, educators, families, schools, businesses, and communities. It's all of those thriving, right? And so we're really looking at how does our state STEM strategy be a strategy that all of those pieces can really be intentionally brought in through the picture. I'm going to hand it back over to Dr. Chapman.
Thank you, Megan. So with respect to state alignment, Michigan's top 10 strategic education plan goals 4 through 7 that we have noted here on the screen promote the message that an engaged learner leads to a greater chance that students complete a positive K-12 experience that prepares them for future opportunities. So what can that look like? Here we have example of the various types of experiences that a student can encounter. A specific state alignment component being high-quality experiences that actually render relevant real-world integration and learning transfer through what we shared with you last year, 3P learning, which includes, as shared here, place, problem, and project-based learning. Just a few things to highlight about those 3. As shared during our time with you last year, board, place-based approaches pursue cultural, environmental, and geographical learning opportunities associated with a community that the learner is connected to. Problem-based learning encourages exploration and experimentation. Project-based learning, commonly known in the classroom as PBL, promotes real-world hands-on experiences that offers learners the opportunity to create tangible outcomes during the learning process. That then becomes a theme through LEO and MDE, where our collective, and as Megan emphasized, collaborative efforts construct a statewide STEM strategy that delivers 3 core elements as shared here. We highlight here connecting learners with STEM education in high-wage careers for a viable future. Secondly, through the MySTEM regions that we shared early in this presentation, there is the opportunity to gather data, some of which we will share momentarily, and insights across Michigan to determine STEM focus areas and funding opportunities. This allows for an engaging of local leadership and partnerships to connect learners with opportunities that foster learning and innovation. And now Sarah will share the connection of the strategy to our Michigan workforce development efforts. Sarah?
Thank you, Dr. Chapman, and nice to see everybody. Thanks for having us back. So since the last time, as Megan mentioned, since the last time we were here to speak with you, the Department of Labor and Economic Opportunity, with the governor's support, has released a statewide workforce plan. And underlying that plan is the idea that Michigan really already has a strong network of assets to work from. And we believe that that is mirrored in our MySTEM work as well. So we have the local, regional, and state partners who are all helping children, students, and working adults develop the skills that they need, sort of not just to survive, but to thrive. Go to the next one. To that end, the plan both sort of reaffirms some existing goals and also identifies new ones. You'll see the first two are sort of the most relevant, we think, to the work of MySTEM. And so you can see the sort of doubling down on the 60 by 30 goal, that we will have 60% of Michigan's working age adults to have a degree or credential by 2030. It says 51.1% today. I will say those data lag. I don't know if it's obvious, but they're from the census, so it's a couple years old at this point. So we're probably a little bit higher by now. Still have a lot of work to do. And the plan identifies the goal of moving 75,000 households sort of up into the middle class, which would take us within the nation from 28th to joining the top 10 list. So ambitious goals, but goals we really can organize around and can measure our progress towards. So that first pillar is really about the skill development, and it contains 3 strategies, again, 2 of which are pretty relevant here. And one is increasing degrees and certifications by really understanding and focusing on both access to post-secondary pathways and supporting students through to actually achieve and succeed once they're there. So understanding access and success. And the second is expanding pathways to lifelong learning and career success. And so broadening the doors in to post-secondary education for traditional age students and for adults, for instance, with Reconnect. And then the second pillar is really about these opportunities. And the focus there is primarily on kind of reducing barriers to education, employment, and earning quality job opportunities. And one of the 4 strategies is a strong focus on career exposure, exploration, and navigation. Again, a big part of what we see often in some of the local work that is happening within the MySTEM network. And so you can see there that the focus, again, I keep hearing Megan say the word thrive, and I'll say it as well, that we want Michigan to be a place where children, families, and businesses can all sort of thrive for generations to come. One of the things that I think is sort of also a parallel or a connection between MySTEM and the LEO workforce plan, that like MySTEM is called out within the workforce plan in particular, partly because we see in both of these plans this growing recognition that like we cannot achieve the type of change that we need for kids and for our communities by working in silos. And so whereas we see amazing projects with MySTEM, like engage with business owners and community members to create authentic learning opportunities where kids have the opportunity to like solve a real problem and be really engaged in their learning. We also see the workforce plan is also around bringing together a lot of different partners who sometimes work in more siloed ways from each other because we have to kind of address a really complicated set of barriers that folks are facing in terms of re-engaging with the workforce. So there's both some really just direct linkages between these plans and also I think a similar approach to recognizing we need to be doing things in a more collaborative way. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. And now let's take a close look at our federal alignment. The United States Education Department message simply is, you belong in STEM. We have three goals that align to that messaging provided by the U.S. Department of Education, as noted here on the screen. These goals provide strategic direction for the department's STEM-related efforts to meet the most pressing needs of students and educators. Further, through this initiative, the department calls on all states, districts, schools, and STEM-connected organizations and industries to make specific, tangible commitments aligned to the goals to provide all students with the experiences and resources they need to succeed in STEM and in life. So this initiative is actually coined as YBIS, You Belong in STEM, and it has several key strategies as noted here on the screen. These strategies focus on improving students' learning and outcomes in STEM. And so therefore, the U.S. Department of Education has launched the Raise the Bar STEM Excellence for All Students initiative, which again is coined as You Belong in STEM, or YBIS, which is designed to actually strengthen STEM education nationwide based on the strategies noted there on the screen. This next section of the presentation will focus on 2023-2024 metrics. Our first metric is My STEM Focus Area 1, focusing on activities and participation and demographics for both the MySTEM network and more specifically, those activities that are promoted through the MySTEM Advisory Council. As a MySTEM Advisory Council member, I have gladly served on the evaluation committee, which takes a close look at data-driven results. Here on the screen, we have some of our data presented, focusing on Area 1. This data shares the participation and demographics of MySTEM supported STEM education programs and services. We are excited today to share that within the past year, nearly 38 educators in 141 school districts, and more specifically, within over 450 schools, have received services and support through the MySTEM network. A distinct point of pride that we would like to share today is that nearly 66,000 students here in Michigan have been served, and over 16,000 educator and student participants specifically for underrepresented groups in the state are receiving support in STEM education. Metric 2.1 highlights the number, nature, focus, and impact of STEM-related business community education partnerships over actually a 3-year period. So you'll see data here noting from 2021 up through currently in 2024, with sustained growth by all the partnership types that are presented on the screen. This slide shares a sample business community education partnership. We have, since the beginning of this presentation, talked about collaboration and the importance of partnerships. Specifically here, we highlight Region 9, who partnered with a higher education institution and several nonprofit businesses to organize an annual preparation event themed or called Mock It, Then Rock It. For several high school students across the state, this included a practice interview and then attending breakout sessions where the students had an opportunity to learn specifics about the skills needed and the credentials that they would be able to earn by being focused and committed to STEM education. The end of the event survey reported that 90% of the students that attended on that day indicated feeling more prepared and confident to pursue their career interests due to participating in the event. The second bulleted example presented here covers actually 5 MySTEM regions, which organized and provided financial support for 172 educators to participate in externship experiences that help them better understand their work and the skills needed for their students to apply in the STEM classroom. Moving on to metric 2.2, this metric reported 190 MySTEM regional grant supported activities which align with the MDE career development model. The 190 activities represent 81% of the total activities, which actually is nearly 240 total activities that align with the MDE career model. And now for metric 2.3. This data is specific to changes in MySTEM students' STEM identity and interest in STEM careers, along with the perception of STEM utility, teacher self-efficacy on teaching STEM content. The highlight or point of pride here is that nearly 90% of teachers report that they are continually improving their STEM teaching practice by the opportunities, resources, and supports provided by the MySTEM network, which is supported by the MySTEM Advisory Council. Sticking with that same metric, this slide provides additional responses specific to self-efficacy in teaching STEM, noting here that over 80% report that they can encourage students to think critically when engaging them in STEM projects in particular. This is now a great segue to Megan, who will share classroom and community impact of STEM learning. Megan?
Thank you, Dr. Chapman. Really want to share some examples today. Part of our charge in MySTEM is to identify best practices and then figure out how to scale them. And so a lot of our work is seeing what's out there. How do we share that message? How do we learn the critical pieces that they're doing? But also, like I spoke to earlier, MySTEM is for anyone who's committed to STEM education and wants to see this moving forward. So the two examples we are bringing today really showcase what these partners are doing, right? So this first one we really wanted to pull up because we often talk about how do we get more student voice into our classrooms and into our practices. And we really wanted to share this example because they're doing some rather transformative work, and yet it's a practice that everyone could do. So we wanted to highlight the Tri-County Culturally Responsive Mathematics Institute. They also host a speaker series and Meaningful Math and STEM Showcase, and it is a collaboration between Washington Intermediate School District, Oakland Schools, and the Wayne RISA as well. And so what you see here is actually a display from the Students' Meaningful Math and STEM Showcase piece. You can see that students have actually chosen the topics that they want to study and want to see math through, right? So if we want to move forward more 3P, place, problem, project-based experiential models for education, that means that we need to help students be comfortable with those models, but we also need to help the educators in the system itself become comfortable with those models. And so what's really impactful here is that students actually participate 2 weeks in the summer with their future or current math educators in designing what, like taking their curriculum that they use in their district and designing what problems and projects they want to work on in the coming year. Those students then become student leaders throughout the year as they go through these units. And then of course you have the public display where they are interacting and really empowered to share their solutions and their findings that they've had. So it really gives you a relevant experience of like how math is used in the real world. But I think what's really exciting here is that students are, by engaging in that professional development time with their educators, they're potentially, or we're hoping, right, that this is a model for also improving that STEM educator pipeline as well, right? As students are really getting a taste of what does it mean to design relevant learning for my students that students are interested in, and how do you authentically bring in that student voice. So we really wanted to champion this example today because it's not a way that you traditionally see students being engaged, right? And it's a way to not only improve the classroom teaching, but also recruit for our future generation of educators as well. Let's move to the next example. Also in this one, so the last example you saw, like they're working with mathematics, but as you can see through their presentations, right, they're definitely getting some ELA skills in there as well through their presentations and the research that they are doing. But in this example, right, we're also showing where they're stretching across, like intentionally stretching across other disciplines as well. And for this example, since last time I know we focused on what we've been doing jointly with the Department of Environment, Great Lakes and Energy. This time, this example is actually jointly funded, or the effort is, we've kind of facilitate the grant process for the Michigan Economic Development Corporation and, their talent action team that's really focused on, our mobility transformation and the semiconductor careers that are out there. And so through a problem, project, place-based approach, this is the industry like context that students are, those problems and projects are coming from. And so what's really exciting here is that you see Muskegon ISD, specifically also their Career Tech Center, the SHAPE Corporation working hand in hand with Muskegon Public Schools, Orchard View Schools, Muskegon Heights Public School Academy, and a few others. So you should know that in 2022, when this first started, this initiative came from or was funded through regional assistant grant dollars as well, right? So really looking at how we can use a variety of funding sources in order to move something forward. But what's exciting about this piece is that starting in 6th grade, they're engaging in, they're doing some deep exploration in these careers. And the educators are also going through the Henry Ford Design Institute, right? So they're learning how to teach through a design thinking model, which is a 3P model, and essentially practicing it in an out of school time space, right? So maybe you don't feel as many pressures on trying out this new pedagogical approach, right? That you may not have used before. And as they are supporting those educators and the students are having this experience, they're then growing what the curriculum can look like during the school day and how they can move that into the school day. So we're now adding in through these MEDC grants that partnership with SHAPE. So MEDC is really committed to, supporting in the K-8 space, mobility and semiconductor opportunities, and they are doing the direct connection for these districts with that employer partner, right? Bringing them to the table in order to help design what those problems and projects really can be in an authentic way. So again, kind of a model to onboard educators into 3P. But then what they're starting to see is students are now from the middle school starting to enter high school and saying, oh, I really would like to see this model of instruction continue. So again, really exciting work that our communities are embarking on and thinking about how they use multiple different partners and resources in order to make this happen for their students. Last time we shared with you a little bit about work that we were doing with these particular groups, so we wanted to come back and say where has that work progressed since last time. So the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine just released. So last time we had reported that we were one of the 4 tours, like local district tours or community tours that the National Academies did. It's the only time they have actually left the academies and come out into the field. So we were one of 4 communities, and that report was just released in July, and they will be coming back in order to share that report with the communities. Now the community that we took them to was the Western UP. We were really a remote rural example of what STEM education in the various systems look like in order to move it forward. And so it's really great to see our work essentially being picked up at a national level and informing that report, but it's also a really useful report for us to continue to guide our state STEM strategy. So stay tuned. That's a public meeting. And part of what we've learned from our schools that are going down this path is that once they see this in practice, they can then conceptualize what it might look like back in their communities. So we want to continue lifting up these best practices and bringing people on these visits with us. Also, the CHIPS and Science Act federal funding released an NSF STEM Teacher Corps grant this year, which MDE is through the Office of Educator Excellence provided a letter of support as well. They encouraged regions of states applying for this, and our region really said, Michigan, we are excited for you to take the lead, and we are actually excited about your state STEM strategy 3P, and so that's been written into this NSF grant application, and hopefully next time we come back to you, we can say that we were successful in bringing that forward. But that's really designed to be a model of how do we lift up and champion our teachers that are doing this work and help them be able to speak to their colleagues and in other spaces in order to help continue to shift the system. NSF also, with partnership with MSU, this grant will also look, as you can see, they're looking locally, so we are kind of their state network. And some of our MySTEM regions are going to be the particular areas of focus. But then this is to inform a national search tool of what it really means to kind of lift up these best practices. But the tool is really intended to say, how do you get communities to really drive the research, right? Or drive what their vision for STEM education will be in their community. And so that's really exciting to see that move forward as well. And then also through the Office of Science and Technology Policy, they just released last week a revised federal STEM plan, but you'll see a chart from the past STEM plan that's in here that's driving our work, and the continued collaboration that we see there, is really, how are we working with the Office of CTE in order to champion the state STEM strategy is the Michigan Career Development Model, and how we push that down into younger grades so that we're really exploring all the way through and students are then more aware of, CTE opportunities and everything else, as well as the Perkins Math Improvement Plan, helping to be a part of that and bring other resources to bear. DTMB working very closely with their cybersecurity goals across the state. Again, like our other state agencies really kind of set these context for the problem or the project and in your specific place, right, that we can have some authentic learning through. MEDC, we already showcased that grant effort. And then, of course, last time we showcased the work with the Department of Environment, Great Lakes, and Energy. So we are hoping through, let's actually go to the next slide because we just also on November 12th released the Council's FY26 annual recommendations, kind of doubling down, as you saw from our conversations of, the new Michigan State Workforce Plan, our goals that we have in the MDE Top 10 already, the You Belong in STEM initiative at the federal level, and the federal STEM plan. We feel like our strategy is still very much in line with those and only gives us more resources and capacity in order to move it forward because these other entities are seeing the benefit of that as well. And so really what's driving the council's FY26 report is this single chart that showed up in the federal STEM plan that was last released in 2018. And really what we want to showcase here is that the federal STEM plan has each of the federal agencies saying, here's our role in moving that forward. And so we are really hopeful, based on the work that we've done already with our partners across other state agencies, that we will eventually have a chart like this for Michigan, right? That says, here's our state STEM plan, here's how we all collectively move forward Michigan STEM. So that's really our goal, and you'll also see in the recommendations, we called direct attention to some of the school aid items that are for STEM as well, because those are items, just like you've heard from CTE earlier today, experiential learning models are the learning models that we know work for students. It's highly engaging, and we know that educators also feel successful in those models as well, and it definitely helps students be able to explore the various careers that they have available. So we tried to amplify those other efforts in the state school aid fund, where if we notate that work is also part of, or could be a part of, our state STEM strategy, that just helps us work more effectively and efficiently as a state. And yeah, I think we're on to our wrap up. So the other piece that the council's really recommended is, how can we accelerate our strategy, right? We have few dollars. If we look just at the MySTEM dollars, it's really about how do we use a collective impact networked approach in order to move this forward. But the council has also promoted over to last year and going into this year as well, that in order to really accelerate this strategy so that we can make an impact in this lifetime, not just, picking away at the edges with our current amount of state funding, is that over a 3 to 5 year heavier investment in really like 3 to 5 communities across our state, right? So that we can highlight various grade levels, partners both inside and out of school, rural, urban, suburban. What we consistently hear and see also in these national reports is that you have to see it in order to believe it. And for our schools that have made these changes in our state, they have had the ability to travel sometimes out of country to other states, and that's a real equity concern for us. And so we really want to make sure that we can invest in some demonstration communities in-house in Michigan so that everyone can see it in practice, touch it, feel it, see it, and the research definitely shows that once you start down this path, it just accelerates your interest, and within 3 to 5 years, you can figure out how to sustain and continue to move this forward. So thank you very much for allowing us to come today. We're trying to be mindful of your lunch hour break, so we'll turn it back over to you.
Okay, thank you very much, presenters. We appreciate you. Board members, questions, comments, concerns, fears, phobias, neuroses. While you're thinking, we want to acknowledge Ms. Ruth Ann Hodges, the manager of the Education Experiences Unit in the Office of Educational Supports, right, educational supports in the department, and Mr. Scott Koenig, our social studies consultant. We appreciate you both. Board members, questions or comments? Dr. Pugh.
Thank you for that robust presentation. And at the top of the presentation, I was really happy to hear that you cleared up that STEM equals STEAM, or stream, I should say. So that's good to hear. I mean, we're always adding more letters in, so I can
Yes.
understand why you wouldn't change it, but that's good that that clarity was brought forward. As I'm thinking about how different programming and different people have helped to shape my path in the sciences, I'm just curious to know how our community centers, how our community activities strongly integrated into what's happening in this space, and that it's definitely not an afterthought, but they are at the table. If you could just speak to that.
Sure. That's a great question, Dr. Pugh. Serving and representing MDE and serving on the MySTEM Advisory Council, we have quarterly meetings. And a highlight of those quarterly meetings is that I'm able to not just sit at the table, but also to interact and hear literally not just from the educators in those regions, but the business affiliates, the local organizations who are committed to that region with partnering in promoting STEM education. I will have Megan to chime in as well, but that really um, that real world connection, it is happening, and it is happening in those 16 regions across the state. So thanks for asking that. Megan?
Yeah, so the council this year has also asked across all of our grants that there's a required asset mapping being done, right? Not only of the human capital, but of the different partners that are really already committed to the state STEM strategy. I think what a lot of times the community partners are bringing sometimes the cultural end of things, right? Of like, how do students have a foot in the door to this learning? But a lot of times they're also bringing that problem, that project, right? The relevant context that students are engaging with. And through that 3P approach, essentially any community partner that's coming in there, they have a career in that space, right? So we're trying to help help the educators in the schools essentially recognize that I'm not just bringing in this guest speaker today. This is actually meeting the career development model, right? This speaker can talk about how they got into this career, why are they really excited about this career, right? So those partners are really a key component of making sure that the instruction really is relevant to students and their local communities.
I'll just add too, I think, it's not the natural skill set of all of our educators to be like reaching out to community organizations, building those relationships and doing it in a way that's sustainable and is like a sustained, authentic relationship as opposed to a like, I need somebody tomorrow for this one project. And so, but I think that's some of the professional development that actually is provided as part of the network because educators want to do it and just like we provide a little bit of support about like how to build those relationships so that they're really meaningful and long lasting.
Thank you, Dr. Pugh. Anything more?
No, I think that's it for now.
Thank you. Ms. Tilley?
Thank you so much for the presentation. As a former STEM instructor at Wayne State for a K through 12 program, I definitely love the information. You mentioned about the different opportunities, even global opportunities. One of the things that we did was make sure that they had national opportunities to participate with different organizations, conferences, and because it was sponsored by NASA, we, did the NASA tours, but also like Women of Aerospace, National Black Engineers, Society of Engineers, or I'm probably messing it up, but are you helping to make those types of connections and partnerships so that they have those opportunities? And also, I definitely would love in a different presentation to hear how this is helping expand opportunities for those career pathways.
So first of all, with the research literature around these pedagogies is really about what is that authentic demonstration of your knowledge, right? So not only are those partners encouraged, I think you, Delsa, had one of the metric slides that kind of showed over the years kind of different groups or partners that, our regions have been focused on engaging with, right? Like how that's grown over the years. So those partners a lot of time offer that authentic space to be able to expand their learning. And because we're saying, my STEM isn't separate work, right? It's all of us that are trying to move in this direction. We're really trying to look at, okay, you've been working here, if we combine this with it, now we can do, you know, the local competition, the state competition, and the national competition, right? So those are the things that we are starting to really see as we continue to like kind of connect the dots of rich assets that already exist in our state.
We absolutely had them engaged in the competitions as well, but even at the conferences and even maybe pairing them with mentors or, you know, giving them opportunities to see the sessions, giving them that exposure, I think would definitely be great too. Yeah. How long have this been around?
So the council was first put in place 2015. They had about 2 months to make a recommendation to the governor at that time. That was because federal funds were changing what we were receiving for mathematics professional learning in our state. And then the network, the first year of the network like being in place was fiscal year 2018.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tilley. Other questions from board members? Hearing and seeing none. So in my experience as a local educator, talking about STEM had less impact than showing kids engaged in STEM, because it really lit up their excitement around STEM fields. You see boys and girls in a middle school classroom engaged in engineering and robotics, and they're geeked. There's all this buzz in the room. They're working together, they're excited, they're engaged, they're applying their learning. Math doesn't seem so distant anymore. Science doesn't seem so distant anymore. You understand why you're doing the math, maybe not why it's done in isolation, but you understand why you're doing the math. You understand why you're doing the science in miniature, maybe not why it's done in isolation, but you understand the value of it. You're beginning to put the pieces together to figure out what you want to do for a career. Earlier today, we had some young people from Washington ISD who shared with us on their career paths. Well, oftentimes their career paths are a function of what they see at home, what they see down the block, what they see in school, what a teacher introduces him, her, them to. And robotics or any STEM activity is just taking what you learn in isolation and applying it. We should be doing more of this in our education. For a variety of reasons, we don't do as much of it as we should. But to sell STEM, I would encourage you to use young people and their experiences. Just let them tell their stories in STEM, that they're a lot more effective in sharing what geeks them than we are. It's not to say that we're just older. Not bad, but older. And I think they can speak to their experiences better. I think any of us can speak to our experiences better. So I just would encourage that, and not simply pictures, but video, not simply video, but in person sharing about their experiences. Because what we find is, what you know, Megan and Sarah and Dr. Chapman, what you know is that what young people experience, there's a fighting chance that they will continue. I look back on what I did in school, and what was interesting to me in school was any subject taught by a teacher who was geeked about her subject or his subject. And if you could light up your subject, if you could make your subject turn on, I was interested. And it didn't much matter what it was. It was science, it was math, it was social studies, it was ELA, it was world languages, or. And you've got a lot of teachers who are really lighting this work up. But these are known in their little corners of the world. And so sharing those in small videos, I think is really impactful with student voice, I think really powerful. And then opportunities for young people to speak their mind about this. One of the raps on what we do in school from kids is that it's boring, it's disconnected, it's not engaging. And that's not the rap on STEM education. In fact, quite the contrary. So anyway, I think there's a lot of story here to tell, and I would just advocate doing so with as much kid voice as we can. We're happy to work with you in that regard. Board members, it is 12:09. It was a scintillating morning. I'm not 100% sure what that means, but it's a big word, and it has a C in it. And our Michigan Teacher of the Year will tell us precisely how it's spelled this afternoon. It is 12:09. We are going to break until 1:10 p.m. for lunch. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And thank you for your recommendation.
Totally talking about that.